Hello, Facebook friends. It's Amy Wheeler again. And I just had this need to get on Facebook today and talk a little bit about how we can deal with anxiety. At this time of year, we're going into the fall season, which is usually a time of high anxiety. We know in yoga and Ayurveda that when the seasons get cold and a little bit of there's dryness, this tends to invoke anxiety inside of us. So I've been having a little bit of anxiety lately. I'm not sure if it's the weather or if it's some changes that have happened in my life recently, but I thought it would be good to talk about what are some of the general things that we can do to reduce anxiety. And I want to make this a talk that you could share with a loved one or someone in the public that doesn't have to understand all the yoga language and Ayurvedic language. I really want to keep it simple and talk about what we can do to change our lifestyle in order to decrease our anxiety. So one of the first things I want to talk about is that we know through medical science that usually our cortisol, which is one of our stress hormones, is highest early in the morning when we wake up, usually around sunrise. So when the cortisol is highest, we need to do something to work that off. Just like when an animal has a fight or flight response or stress response, it gets up and it moves and it shakes and it tries to get rid of that cortisol response. And we need to do the same thing, which is why anyone with anxiety should get up first thing in the morning and do exercise. If you do exercise first thing in the morning, whether it's yoga postures or going for a walk or getting on the treadmill, whatever it is you like to do, you must move your body first thing in the morning and burn off that cortisol. And this is one way that we can deal with anxiety. We can discharge it, which is a little different than trying to relax down out of the anxiety. So I always like to ask people, how much anxiety do you have? If you have a ton of anxiety, like on a scale of 1 to 10, you have an 8 or a 9 or a 10, I tell people get out there and move and discharge it. If your anxiety is a little lower, just kind of a generalized anxiety disorder where maybe you're living at a 3 or a 4 and it's just kind of always there, then you might be able to use relaxation techniques, yoga techniques, meditation techniques, breathing techniques to just kind of slowly bring yourself down out of the anxiety. But there are some people that when they try to relax or try to do breathing or try to do meditation, it actually makes them more anxious because now they're tuning into themselves and they're starting to feel what's happening inside of them. And that actually makes them feel worse. So I think we have to be really careful with yoga techniques, not to assume that yoga is going to help everyone with their anxiety. It actually could make them more aware of their anxiety and what's going on inside of them, which could make them really uncomfortable. So I've had a few people like this over the years in my Cal State classes, my college kids, that they've heard all these great things, they should take yoga class. They actually get in yoga class and we start doing all this slow movement and breathing and meditative type movement. And they come to me and they say, this is horrible. It's making it worse. I feel awful. And I just say, well, I think you're becoming more aware of what's happening inside of you. So there are people that do better if they go for a power walk or a run or some type of exercise before they actually try to do the yoga. It kind of discharges them a little bit. So I've actually had college students that I say, you go and do 20 minutes of jogging and then come to class, and we'll take you down from there after you've discharged. So especially in the morning, that's a really nice strategy, is to get a little cardio, get a little sweat, get a little movement, and then do the yoga practice. Other people can go right into their yoga practice. Some other things that really, really help me decrease my anxiety are getting out and walking in nature. It just reminds me when I see the big blue sky and the trees and the animals. I live in the woods, so I can get a lot of nature whenever I want it. It just reminds me that there's something much larger than me. I don't stay so self-focused. So I don't want to say self-centered because it's not about being self-centered. It's more that you get an expanded view of reality and that there's more going on in this world than just what's happening to you at this moment. So nature tends to really help me understand that I am this one little person with definitely having problems, and that there is something a whole lot bigger than me going on out there. And it helps to give me perspective. Not to mention, I just feel like being in nature helps all of us to feel better. We breathe deeply, we, merge with the energies of nature, and it tends to help us feel better, especially if we're exercising in nature. Another couple things that I love to do, especially when I'm having anxiety early in the morning. So there are times that I wake up at, 3:30 in the morning, and I know I don't want to get out of bed yet. I have a long day ahead of me, and I need more sleep, but I can't go to sleep because my mind is spinning. So on those mornings at 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the morning, I literally go into my bathroom and I run a hot bath and I put oil on myself, especially on the areas that are a little bit stiff or sore. For me, that's my knees and my low back. And I put oil on, and then I sit in the bathtub for 20 minutes and maybe listen to a podcast on something very nourishing, or definitely not energizing or stimulating, but usually for me it's a podcast called Everyday Zen, which is a free podcast that I love on Zen Buddhism. And then honestly, sometimes I can get back in bed and fall asleep, especially if I don't have to get up early. If I can get back in bed by 4, sometimes I can sleep until 7, and it's like this really blissful sleep. So especially for those of you that don't have to get out of the house super early, maybe try that early morning bath and oil and see if it doesn't kind of settle you down into your day. Another thing that is very, very hard for me, but I really work on doing it, is limiting the screen time, right? Especially before bed. If I am anxious in any way and I start looking through the news stories of the day, it sends me over the edge. I'm sure a lot of you are in the same boat as me right now, that news is not our friend. So I've kind of implemented this policy now that I get 10 minutes of news per day. In the morning, if I feel like it, I can look at the headlines, make sure the world hasn't collapsed, and that's it. And I really have to limit myself to the news out there, because it can be so stressful. No matter what side of the political aisle you're on, it really can be very, very stressful. So now I just limit myself to 10 minutes in the morning just to make sure I'm up to speed on a few things. And then I literally force myself not to go there the rest of the day. Another thing that is very, very soothing when you're having a lot of anxiety is any kind of warm liquids. Those of you who are into yoga and Ayurveda, you understand why warm liquids help us. But basically, they do a really, really great job in just settling you down. So when someone says, have an afternoon cup of tea, it's not just a timeout. There's actually physiological things that happen when we drink warm liquids. So first thing in the morning when I get up, I have a cup of hot water. Before I even start any kind of coffee or any kind of breakfast or anything, I have my first cup of hot water. And then I oftentimes try to put a big thermos full of hot water next to my desk so that I drink warm water all day. It helps with digestion, which is really great, especially if you have any kind of constipation. That will totally help you to drink warm liquids all day. But for today's purposes, it's really about helping to decrease anxiety. And you might be surprised how well that works. Of course, if you're drinking warm liquids that contain a ton of caffeine, that's going to be a problem. So find ways to limit your caffeine intake. Obviously, there's plenty of herbal teas. There's magnesium powder, which has a citrusy taste to it. Also helps with constipation. But magnesium is known to be very, very calming and relaxing. So another thing, especially if you're having anxiety in the evening, is just to have a little bit of hot water with some magnesium powder. My favorite brand is called Calm, C-A-L-M. Like I said, they have different flavors, lemon, raspberry. You can order it online. Calm magnesium powder. And that is very soothing and very calming. A lot of people tell me that that's how they go to bed every night, and they avoid taking any kind of sleeping pills or anything like that. So try Calm. It's really good. What else do I do? This may sound like a funny one for some of you, but I call it shared nervous system. So whenever I'm having a really hard time, I'm super anxious, I ask my husband to lay down in bed with me and spoon. Whether I'm spooning him or he's spooning me doesn't matter. But somehow sharing the pain of life and sharing the difficulty of life with another person, whether you're talking or not talking, doesn't matter. Like I said, I call it the shared nervous system. You know someone is there for you. You know someone is there to hold you when you're really having a hard time. And by the way, it works with your dog too, or your cat. So I sometimes I have an 80-pound dog, and sometimes I share his nervous system. I just cuddle up next to him and do my breathing, and 15 minutes later I feel really, really great. So Guy has a little tip for us. He says, thanks for all these great reminders. The best thing for all of us is nature, and stepping stones away from technology is so important, especially today. He says there's an herb called skullcap that is really good, that some of you might like to get. And then the oil massage is wonderful, especially during the fall and the winter. Like I said, very anxiety reducing. And then Guy has some things that I don't have on my list, but of course, thank you. Not just warm liquids, but warm soupy foods. Soups and stews and dal, lentils, anything that is soft and moist and warm in your tummy, believe it or not, is going to reduce anxiety. So again, I don't want to get into all the technical details on this particular podcast or FaceTime Live about why it is that stews and soups and lentils, soupy lentils, are going to help reduce anxiety. But trust us, it works. It's been working for thousands of years. And if you don't believe me, just try it. What do you have to lose? Get your hot water, get your soups going, do some of these other things that we're talking about, and see if your anxiety doesn't come down. A few other people are just saying hello. Anyone who has comments, feel free to jump in here. I see Danilo from South America. Nice to see you, Danilo. And you're not feeling so anxious. And I didn't think you would be. You're a very relaxed gentleman. But if you have ideas for the rest of us, please bring it on, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm heading into winter. I live in the mountains, and it's getting a little bit more cold, and got to turn the heaters on and get the fireplace going, which is another thing, keeping yourself warm. Believe it or not, just keeping warm clothes on. We have a wood burning stove that we have to load with actual firewood. That's the way that we keep the top level of our house warm. We don't even have centralized heat, but that type of fire is so amazing for reducing anxiety. There's no air blowing on us. It's just heat pumping out of this old wood stove, and just sitting there reading with a cat on your lap. One of the best ways that I love to reduce anxiety. Another thing you might consider is any kind of creative outlet where you're creating art, whether you're drawing or whether you're painting. I do a lot of just doodling, especially things with your hands. There's been many research studies to show that any kind of art with your hands, that could even include a musical instrument, can reduce anxiety. And other things with your hands, like puzzles and gardening, these types of things, when you're actually using your hands, that apparently, according to the modern research, tends to really help people bring down their anxiety. So I know people that all winter long, they have a table in their home that has an ongoing puzzle on the table. And when they finish one, 12,000 piece puzzle, they'll put another 1,200 piece, not 1,000. They'll put another puzzle on there, and they just do puzzles in the evenings all winter. So that might be an idea of something that you can do with your hands to reduce anxiety, which goes to another thing that we like to do in yoga, called these little hand gestures, where we just kind of slide the thumb on the fingers. I do this under the table a lot. If I'm at a meeting and I'm feeling a little anxious, I'll just kind of work with my little finger gestures. I'll do 4 on the right side, and then I'll go to the other side, and nobody even knows that I'm doing this, but it's very soothing to me. Just like I said, anything with your hands is very soothing. So I'll do 4 on the left, and then I'll do 4 with both fingers. So it's 12 total, and it really, really helps me soothe myself. Another thing that I find very soothing is just to do this. Sometimes when I'm really anxious, I'll just, in my own lap, I'm doing it up here now, but in my lap, I'll do it. Just sliding of my hands back and forth tends to create a very soothing effect. And I think that goes back to all the nerve endings that are in our hands and just, impacting our nervous system through touch, right? Just like when you get a massage, it's very soothing, which is another great thing to do. I decided this fall that I was going to treat myself to regular massage. Usually I don't feel that I can, afford that, and I just decided I was going to make it a priority and try to get quite a bit of massage this fall as an act of self-care and self-nourishment. I had a death in my family this few weeks ago, and I just decided I needed some extra care. So if you can't get someone to give you a massage, maybe you could trade. You could tell people, I'll give you one if you'll give me one. Sometimes my husband and I do that when we're feeling like we can't afford to go outside and get a massage. Another huge thing that you can do to decrease anxiety is cut back on your caffeine, especially in the morning. I read a really beautiful article recently, and it had nothing to do with yoga and Ayurveda. It was actually a separate medical study that said, don't drink your coffee till 10 a.m. And those of you who know about the different times of day in yoga and Ayurveda, you understand, like, oh, of course, that makes all the sense in the world. But what I laughed about was that this study there were no yoga researchers on it. There were no Ayurvedic people on it. They basically just figured out that if people had warm liquids in the early part of the morning and waited to have that big cup of coffee until 10 a.m., that their anxiety was significantly lower. So I'm not sure if that's an option for any of you to kind of delay your caffeine till 10 a.m. Also, just after lunch is a good time to have a little bit of caffeine. I know a lot of us really love it first thing in the morning, but if you can delay it a little bit and do it with some food, that's always going to help with anxiety too. So these are just lots of ideas that I wrote down a little list, trying to think of all the different things that I do to help with my anxiety. And again, if any of you want to jump in here and give your ideas, I would love to share them with our group. We've already had a few from Guy. I see a lot of yoga people on here. You must have ideas. So another thing that I want to talk about with respect to anxiety is that sometimes it's not a pacification, like I've been talking about, almost like a Band-Aid where you go out in nature or use baths or use oil, these type of things. It's not just a Band-Aid. But what I find with a lot of my clients when I do yoga therapy sessions one-on-one is there actually needs to be a lifestyle restructure, whether that's you're not getting enough sleep. And of course, you're going to feel anxious if you're only getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep. Your system is freaking out and not stable. None of us can have a stable system on 4 hours of sleep. So it may be that we restructure your sleep habits and help you find a way to get good, solid, strong sleep. That's a huge thing that we do in yoga therapy and yoga therapy privates. For some people, the reason they're not getting sleep is that their physiology is not allowing it. But for other people, it's that their children are keeping them up too late. So we might have to actually get to the cause of why you're not getting enough sleep, which goes to another thing that I work with all the time when it comes to anxiety, and that is learning to set boundaries, especially with your family. Boundaries at work too, but clear communication, learning how to speak what you need, learning how to set aside self-care time. I have a lot of, especially women that I work with who are moms, that they literally cannot create a schedule for themselves and stick to it with respect to boundaries, meaning you should get 30 minutes a day for self-care, whether you choose to be in the bathtub or you choose to do a yoga practice. If your family can't help you find a way to get 30 minutes for yourself, that's a problem. So sometimes I'll even work with couples on how each person in the couple can make sure they get that self-care time. And this person has agreed to do it in the morning and this person in the evening, but they're both going to get a little bit of time for themselves. And boundaries go to work also. I'm one who really believes that there should be a cutoff time for work. For me, it's usually 5:30, 6 p.m. I do not want to work after that time. If you want to have a meeting with me in the evening, usually I'll say no, unless it's like something that has to be done in the evening. I am not going to do it in the evening. Also, my Sundays are usually, not a lot of work. Today, I just felt like getting on here and doing this because I, like I said, I've been feeling some anxiety, and I wanted to share with you some of the ways that I've been working with my anxiety. But a lot of times on Sundays, my husband and I, we just say no work. We're not going to do it. And we oftentimes have that agreement. Well, on Saturday, we'll say, okay, no work tomorrow, right? So setting boundaries around your time. One that a friend of mine mentioned on Facebook a few weeks ago that I really appreciated. I can't remember what she called it, but basically it was setting time to check emails and kind of just doing it at that time. So anybody who emails me will see on the bottom of my email, it says, I check this email Monday, Wednesday, Friday afternoons. Thank you for your patience. This is my way of, having self-care. Now, I do check at other times, but when I'm being really good, I don't. I try to have that, Monday, Wednesday, Friday afternoon from about 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock is when I'm going to do that. And I try to keep it in that time zone. And that stops me from being on my phone at all times, every single time an email comes in that I have to get back to it. Because what we do is we train people to think that we're going to get back to them within 20 minutes. And then when we don't get back to them within 20 minutes, then they kind of flip out and what's wrong? How come you're not answering me? And, so by kind of grouping hours of the day on certain days a week that you're going to answer emails, people kind of get used to, okay, she's about a 24 to 36 hour answer person, and they don't jump on you and expect that you're going to get back to them so quickly. And so what this does for me in terms of my workload is it slows everything down a bit. Instead of email, back and forth, with 10 different people, now it's like every 2 days we have an email going back and forth. And yeah, it slows down progress. But that's the whole point, is I don't want to work that much. I don't want to work that fast and that hard. I really want to have a lifestyle where I can have more self-care. And if I am getting back to people that quickly and they're getting back to me and we're just jamming work out all the time, I'm not going to have any hours of the day for self-care. So these are just ideas and strategies that I've used, and I would love it if you guys joined in too. And I see so many of you yoga people on here. You must have some that I haven't talked about yet. Another big stressor that I've found and I'm working on all the time is how to communicate my needs in my relationships. And how do I do it kindly and politely and still get the point across? Because sometimes you can be too nice and it's so subtle that the person doesn't even understand that you have told them to back off or you've told them that they're not meeting your needs. So that might be something too. There's a whole bunch of websites and great podcasts that have to do with nonviolent communication. I'm going to put that up here. And it has changed my life. It's called NVC, Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. And this has taught me that my desire to be nice in the world is actually not nice because when I'm not being honest and I'm not saying my needs, I get more anxious. The other person has no idea what I need, and we have poor communication, and the next thing I know, things aren't going well, which creates more anxiety for me. So I've really been learning through this whole nonviolent communication and it's been a 10-year, maybe 12-year journey for me, and it will continue to be for a lifetime, but I'm really learning how to communicate my needs in a way that hopefully I get the point across to the other person. They don't feel offended. My needs hopefully get met more often, and I don't have so many crazy relationships going on that are blowing up on me. So you might consider that if you really have trouble setting boundaries and communicating your needs and getting the point across, maybe it's not the other person's problem. Maybe it's your problem or my problem for not communicating in a way that we can be heard. So that's been a really big one for me. Kimberly, hi, good to see you. She says, I always try to remind myself that I take time to have coffee with a friend or a lunch date with a friend. So I would not take time, because she wouldn't take time to meet herself. I love that, Kimberly. I do that too. I make time to go on walks with people because I might not take that time to do it just for myself. But if I have to meet somebody, then I'll do it. So that's a great idea. Coffee and lunch date is you're having accountability. I have the same thing that I do at the gym. Is I have a certain teacher at the gym. His name is Eric, and I have told him I will be there every Monday at 2:30. And so now, even if I don't want to go or don't think I can go or don't have time to go, well, he's expecting me. So it's kind of the same idea that we build self-care into our daily living by committing to certain things with people to almost force the self-care. Such a great idea. Katie says, I make the goal to jog and walk outdoors at least 30 minutes every single day to keep my anxiety in check. And Katie, I love that. That's exactly what I mean by getting that discharge, right? And then you've combined movement with getting the discharge and nature. And if you do it in the morning, then, you get the cortisol burnt off too. All right, Tony from Florida says, I've been working on being comfortable in saying no in ways that still satisfy my needs to be nice, but still respect myself and my time. Tony, I love that. First of all, Tony, you are one of the nicest people on earth. The times I've met you, I've always thought, wow, you're such a kind, sweet person. But even the nicest people, especially the nicest people, have to learn to say, no, thank you. No, I don't have time for that. Or that's not one of my top priorities at this time. So that's been a big one I've been working on too, Tony, is since I become president of IOIT, I have a lot of requests, and being able to say that my priority right now is serving, a certain community as well as providing for my family. And so for this year or 2 years or however long I do it, I'm not going to be able to accommodate a lot of other needs. Like I have 2 main priorities, and that's what I'm sticking to. And I'm actually quite surprised and pleasantly shocked about how nice people are about it. And they totally understand that I've had to set limits on my time and that I have committed to these priorities that have made it necessary for me to say no thank you to a few other things right now. So I think it's what you're saying is, do you feel comfortable saying no? And can you say it in a way that the other person doesn't feel offended or like you don't care about them, but rather just that this is my reality at this time? So another thing that I see, especially among my colleagues, that is very, very anxiety provoking is finances. Yes, the dreaded word finances, and maybe for all humans on earth at this point, trying to provide for ourselves. And I've had this really interesting experience lately that I want to share with you, and that is that I don't like finances. I don't like worrying about money. I don't like setting budgets. I don't like doing spreadsheets. I don't, particularly like QuickBooks or whatever equivalent you use. But what I found is that when I forced myself to actually pay attention to those things and look at it and look at the reality and sort through it and categorize it and get my books in order, I have way less anxiety. So one of the things I'm challenging myself to do, and trust me, this is a big challenge because I do not care about money. I don't like money. I don't want to deal with it. I just want to be a teacher, right? But I am going to, this month alone, I'm going to 5 3-hour classes on finances and how to manage my business. And I found a place through a university that caters to everybody in the community for, I think it's $54. I have 6 months of unlimited access to these classes that I can go to. And, I scheduled 5 for the month of October, and I'm going to maybe do the same for November and December. I'm going to work this finance thing until I don't have a care in the world about it. And it's so different for me. Usually I would just feel anxious and not want to think about it and avoid it. But what I've decided is that if something's making me feel anxious, I want to look at it head on, and I want to go for it and problem solve and figure out how to resolve that so that it's not like an elephant riding around on my back. So I'm sure there's a lot of universities similar to mine that offer very, very inexpensive classes like this. Like I said, I'm paying, I think, $54 for unlimited classes for 6 months out here near Riverside. So I'm sure there's other universities that are doing something very similar. If you're interested, come join me. I'm there. Last week it was so cool. I went on Tuesday night and there were 5 or 6 other women, business entrepreneurs there. And they were totally normal women. They weren't like yoga people. And I got like a look at the real world again, because sometimes I think we yoga people, we live in our little yoga bubble. And I was like, oh, these are real people. I like these people. So this next Tuesday, I'll go again. And hopefully some of them will be there. So anyway, if you're having financial difficulty, take charge, educate yourself, go after it. Don't just sit there for years and feel anxious about it. It doesn't do any good. And you might be surprised at what you find. I know I was. So Missy says, I wish I'd been more clear about my needs and boundaries sooner in life. I was life and just handling the fallout, not worrying about how another person would react. I think, by setting boundaries. I was raised to be nice, be the bigger person. And not stating how I felt. Being okay with other people being upset that I said no or set a boundary. So yeah, I mean, people are not going to like all of us. They're not going to be pleased with us. They are going to think we're terrible people. They are going to say nasty things about us. They are going to be disappointed. And it's okay. This is life, I think if we're trying to run around and please everybody, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. So that's great, Missy, that you've been really working on that. And like I said, there's so many free resources online around communication that I think can be really helpful. All right, so the last one that I have to share with you that, and again, anybody jump in here and tell us how you handle your stress. The last one is like a big life change, when a life change happens, and kind of understanding that life is going to be different now, whether you lose a job or you lose a partner or you lose a parent or you have to move or, whatever your big change might be. I think it can be very stressful. As I said, I lost a close family member recently, and for the first time in my life, and I'm not even kidding, I started having panic attacks for a few weeks. And I didn't know what that was about. I was like, oh, this is a panic attack. Oh, I never had this before. Now I understand what these are. And it has taken a few weeks for me to basically talk myself down. So one of the things that I do is self-talk. And I tell myself, oh, yeah, this is a panic attack. This is happening. And then I just talk myself down and I say, well, you're going to be okay, Amy. You have always managed to get through. You're a survivor. You're tough. You can do this. This is a temporary situation. These are sensations, physiological sensations that you're feeling. They're there, and it's okay. It doesn't mean they will always be here. It doesn't mean that something terrible is going to happen. It's just a physiological sensation, just like joy, just like fun, just, we have sensations in our body, and really talking myself off the ledge to, because I think sometimes when we feel anxious or have a panic attack, we can project that forward and think, oh, I'm always going to have this, and oh, this feeling is never going to go away. And instead, I do just the opposite, and I say, this is a temporary situation. This will not be forever. This too shall change. And these are just sensations in your stomach and in your throat and in your chest. They're just sensations. It's fine. Let them pass. And when I've been able to talk myself out of it, usually within 20 minutes, I feel fine again. So just remember that when you get a panic attack, if you get a panic attack, it's okay. These things happen. And if you can talk yourself down and not put a permanent stamp on this, or I'm defective stamp, or why does this keep happening, and the anxiety around the anxiety, I guess I should call it. Instead, just tell yourself, yeah, this is coming through me right now. I'm feeling it. I think that the one thing that's really helped me be able to just be okay with those sensations and not take them too seriously is a practice that I started doing a few months ago of just being present moment awareness, like just sitting and just feeling whatever's happening, it's fine. Just be with what is. And so I've been trying to do this for 20 to 30 minutes a day, where I just sit and be, and I feel the chair underneath me, and I feel, the breeze, and I, just hear the birds outside, and I just, whatever is happening in that moment, I just try to be with it. And I think that's really helped when it comes to anxiety and depression, for that matter, to just know that, hey, this is here right now, but it won't always be here. And it's okay. This too shall change. And these are just sensations, and not get too attached to it, or wrap too many stories around it, or, have some big upsetting thing because I'm feeling this way at the moment. So Kimberly also has another great one for us. She says, journaling is a great outlet for me. I find that getting it out is a release, even if it's just on paper. And Kimberly, I'm sure you've experienced this, that sometimes if you just do free writing, just whatever your hand wants to write, let it write. It's almost shocking sometimes what the hand writes. And you look at it and you're like, whoa, that's in my mind? Oh, holy crap, right? So I love the idea of just free writing. Just get it on paper, see what comes out of the hand. And sometimes you're surprised. I've done it at times and had big realizations, especially about relationships that I'm in, and interactions I've had, that my unconscious has a lot it wants to tell me, but for some reason it was being blocked until I just started trying to do free writing. So that's a really, really great idea too. All right, so those are some of my ways that I deal with anxiety. I hope that some of them have been helpful to you going into this season of fall and holiday season that tends to create some anxiety. I wanted to let you guys know that I think it's November 3rd. We have a free community day in San Juan Capistrano. I've posted that on my Facebook. It's a time where a lot of us just get together, and I give a lecture. And I think the lecture is going to be dealing with holiday stress, and then we do a practice, and we have a potluck together. Everybody brings food, and it's a free day. If you want to join us, we'd love to have you. And also let you know that there's plenty of more in-depth workshops about anxiety on amywheeler.com, www.amywheeler.com. And if you'd like to, have a 3-hour workshop on dealing with anxiety, you're welcome to join us there. One other thing is that we are doing a yoga therapy for mental health training starting in January. It's a 7-month program, and it's open to yoga teachers, to yoga therapists, and even some like psychologists and other healthcare providers. So it's going to be a great program. We are really excited. We just got a new location that I'm very excited to share with you in a few days that is going to make it even better. So if you're interested in yoga therapy or yoga for mental health training, we would love to have you. All right. Thank you guys for being with me on this afternoon. It's been lovely, and I wish you well, and I hope that these ideas on controlling anxiety were helpful to you. Thank you.